All right, we're here, Public Policy Day 2025 with John O'Donnell, President and CEO of Washington Area New Car Dealer Association, aka WANADA. John, thank you so much for having us back at the show.
Thank you for having me on the hottest brand in automotive podcasting.
Yeah, we haven't been called that yet.
No, we have never been called the hottest brand, but I will take it.
We'll hope that it sticks.
You can edit that out.
How long have you been in the position that you're in currently?
I've been in the CEO position for about 11 or 12 years. My first day was the 9/11. And
like
that
day
was,
one.
Yeah, that was day one.
You walked in, and then the day you left was a lot different than the day you started.
Wow.
True.
Wow.
Yeah. I can recall going up to the roof of our building, and off in the distance, you could see the smoke from the Pentagon as roughly 6 or 7 Black Hawk helicopters were securing the airspace, flying very low against a tree line because we were told later they were worried about terrorists with Stinger missiles taking out the Black Hawk helicopters.
Wow.
Okay.
What a day to start. And now, and you're in auto. You're like, what am I doing here? I thought we were just doing an auto thing. Obviously, there's been a lot of transition and change since then. And this specific event is a mainstay to what WANADA participates every single year. Can you give us a little bit of background on exactly what Policy Day is and why it's such a mainstay in the annual calendar?
Absolutely, and thank you for the segue. Public Policy Day here is designed to affect automotive legislation and regulation and bring together members of the industry, OEM CEOs and senior executives, with the regulators, frankly, with the staffers. That's where a lot of policies actually made. And media. We need people like you to get the word out about the issues of the day. For example, we just had a very favorable decision out of the FTC voting 2-1 to kill the cars rule, which would have decimated the automotive retailing business. That's the kind of policy that we discuss here at the Washington, D.C. Auto Show.
We were just having this conversation before we got up here, Kyle and I, about the impact of new media on conversations specifically. Obviously, new media influenced an election quite strongly. And one of the gaps that we see in the industry is that people have a perspective, but why they have a perspective is rarely talked about, right? We talk in bullet points when it comes to policy and data points, but rarely do we get perspective. It seems like this is the kind of place where, like you said, the staffers can hear the perspective. We can hear their perspective, and all of that conversation can start to be part of the decisions.
A lot of it's just about simple dialogue, like we're doing right now. You would be amazed at some of the rule writers, the people that actually craft the language that goes into a regulation, and how siloed or sequestered they are from the actual retailing of cars. One quick example would be when Mark Rosekind was the head of NHTSA, and we were trying to get regulations around driverless cars.
Yep.
There were none. And he told me that 90% of the rule writers on his staff had read about the technology. They'd never experienced it. They'd seen it online. So he asked us to put together a connected car and driverless ride and drive so these people could understand what the technology actually is versus their theoretical understanding.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you get in the room with people. We talk a lot about this kind of like if you can hold people at arm's distance and kind of cut them off at the knees as just personas and not persons, it's a lot different. And you get people in the room and you start talking about shared experiences because we've all ridden in or driven a car. We've all experienced purchasing from a person or purchasing from a dealership at some level, right? Or I would say maybe not all. We're in DC. This is a very driverless area, but at least ridden in an Uber or Lyft or some sort of shared transportation. And so I think the shared experience of the auto industry is something that can start to unite us if we're in the room at the same time. What are some of the topics that we're going to hear today that people might be trying to unite around?
So we've just had a change in administration, as everybody knows, and the Trump administration is moving rapidly. And they want consumer choice back at the forefront, whereas the prior administration was heavily pushing pure electric vehicles. And I think it's commonly known now that if you want a pure electric vehicle, you probably already have one.
Right.
Yeah.
Easy
Early
to get,
adopters are in.
Incentives galore, right? If you want one,
Incentives
you have it.
galore, federal money, state money, employers encouraging employees. But those people that want to be the early adopters have done so. You have the preponderance of the American consumers that want a gas-powered car. They just do. Now, there's another segment that wants a plug-in hybrid or just what I'll call an old hybrid.
We have
But the
those now.
current administration made it very clear to myself and our staff here within the past few days that they want it to be about consumer choice. Let people purchase what they want. Let the market decide. And if the dominant technology that's desired by the public is pure EVs, fantastic. That's great. But I think we all know it's not.
Well, I think that you just gave us a segue.
Oh, good.
Because a lot of people don't know Public Policy Day kicks off the day before the big auto show that you all put on.
Yeah.
So tell us about the auto show where it's going to be full of consumers, right? It goes for what, 10 days? It's pretty long, right?
10 days, 2 weekends, 2 levels, lots of different brands, every powertrain you can imagine, lots of things to do for kids and the whole family, automotive art. We have a lot of vehicles that are painted live in front of consumers.
That's cool. Yeah.
We have a STEM, right, which is now known as STEAM, I understand.
Right, we have a letter.
Star Wars themed activation on the lower level. That's going to be very cool. And the idea there is to get young people excited about going into the sciences. You know, we also serve as the host for SAE, the Society of Automotive Engineers. And they bring in about 1,500 engineers that design the cars. But we were talking earlier about the disconnect. They don't really understand the purchasing cycle, the purchasing product. So from the time a vehicle is conceived by an engineer to the time it's brought to market, it's about 3 years.
Wow.
A lot
Yeah.
of changes in 3
A lot of
years.
change.
Yes, right? So we're showcasing not only concept cars here, but what you can purchase from a local car dealer immediately today.
Yeah, you know, we've been talking over the last 2 years, and some of this is due to some of the new automakers coming in, but also just a cultural rebirth around the culture of car, right? Where people are interested in what's the new thing coming out because of EVs, because of new technology being integrated into these. And so it's not just the culture of car ownership, it's the culture of car technology. All of these things are coming to the forefront. You know, if you tell my son that there's something about Star Wars and cars downstairs, like that's going to be an exciting thing, right? He's a 9-year-old. And so I think what is important to connect today is that policy now around auto, particularly now, and it was this way probably in the 70s and 80s, but it clashes and comes and rubs directly with culture more than it has over the past maybe 20 years.
I think we're seeing a resurgence of younger people loving their cars again.
Yeah. Naming them, doing all those things, right?
Naming your car, altering your...
to them.
Yeah, retrofitting it to whatever they think is cool. But for a long period of time, what did we have? Oh, well, it's simply a means to get from point A to point B, and I don't care what I drive. I think that's out the window, and I think we're back to hot rods and people muscle cars and
Gen
people
Z,
understanding I have a love affair with my vehicle.
I think that millennials have grown up somewhat and fallen in love with them because millennials were the ones, I think, pushing that narrative, that generation. And that's starting to shift as like children come along, right? Like things become more important because it wasn't that long ago. I mean, probably less than 5 years when the presiding narrative at NADA was, oh my goodness, we're going to start measuring not in cars sold, but miles driven, and autonomy and car ownership is going to go way down. And the opposite has happened. And now I have teenage kids, so I have Gen Z coming up, and they have favorite cars, and their friends want cars. And so it just feels like a complete 180 from what it was 5-7 years ago.
So here at Public Policy Day, I'm giving ourselves a shameless plug there. We used to talk about the end of vehicle ownership.
Right.
Uber's going to take over the
17,
world. It's going to
18,
be
Amazon, yeah.
subscription-based model. That never happened, and that's not going to happen.
Yep. Well, John, it's been a pleasure hanging out with you. It's clear that you've got a passion for this day, this entire event, and also just how policy and people are kind of coming together. And we can't wait to kind of continue with you through the day and see all of the fun announcements and conversations that happen on the stage.
Right across the way here. It's all happening in a moment.
Awesome.
Thank you very much for having me on today, guys.
Absolutely.